Hi everyone and welcome to Fridays with Fenning. I was out on my run the other day listening to a playlist and one of my favourite tracks came on. It's by U2 and it's called Stuck in a Moment. It goes like this: you've got to get yourself together, you've got stuck in a moment and you can't get out of it. Don't say that later will be better. Now you're stuck in a moment and you can't get out of it. I love this song. It's not a typical U2 sound, but it has a kind of a gospelly feel to it. And U2's lead singer Bono wrote the song following the suicide of his close friend Michael Hutchence, the late singer of In Excess. Bono describes the song as a fight between friends, which he felt guilty for never having had with Hutchence. In an interview with Rolling Stones magazine, Bono explains, he said this: it's a row between mates. You're kind of trying to wake them up out of an idea. And in my case, it's a row I didn't have while he was alive. You know, I feel the biggest respect that I could pay for him was to not write some stupid, soppy song. So I wrote a really tough, nasty little number, slapping him around the head. And I'm sorry, but that's how it came out of me. Now, for me, this song highlights a place that many people in the UK and around the world find themselves at this point. You know, stuck in a moment of fear and anxiety that they just can't get out of. And this COVID-19 pandemic has had a huge impact on people's well-being and mentally and has ramped up fear and anxiety in many people's lives. And following the severe measures of lockdown back in March and the initial spike in hospital admissions and deaths, it appeared that things were getting better. But with the recent rise again and further measures being implemented, with the shorter days and unsettled weather, it can be hard to shake off that anxiety and those feelings of dread and impending doom. The organisation Mental Health UK report that a little over 1 in 10 of us will be living with anxiety disorder at any one time. That's over 8 million people being stuck in a moment that they can't get out of. And of course, not everyone's experience of anxiety will be the same or even expressed with the same symptoms, but it's often revealed through having these racing thoughts of uncontrollable overthinking. You know, those feelings of dread and panic, of extreme tiredness and just a lack of energy, of wanting to escape from the situation that you're in. And people can come out in cold sweats, they can have a racing heartbeat and definitely suffer from insomnia. So last Sunday at the Forge, we showed an interview that I did with Erin Doherty, the lead mental health nurse at CAMS in Birmingham, about mental health and well-being. And Erin was brilliant. And if you haven't seen it, please go to the Forge website, which is forgechurch.com, and click on Media Current Series and take a watch. It starts about 4.5 minutes in. And during the interview, I asked what advice she would give to people with regards to mental well-being. And she gave lots of practical advice, but one of the comments she made that stood out to me was this: we shouldn't underestimate the power of what we put in our heads. In other words, what we feed our minds with will shape how we feel and how we respond. And it's so true, because what we watch, what we listen to, and our thinking then shapes so much of how we feel. I mean, I remember during the outbreak of coronavirus when there were daily government briefings, and like today, the news was filled with coronavirus fears and bad news stories. You know, some of the people that I talked with were really struggling with fear and anxiety, and yet were listening to the news all the time, watching every government briefing, reading about it online and in their newspapers, and it was like an addiction. You know, fear pulled them to try and keep up with everything, and it was damaging their souls and their health. We should never underestimate the power of what we put in our heads. And if we constantly feed our minds with negative stories and fear-filled news, it will affect our mood, it will fuel our fears, and it will attack our well-being. So Paul, one of the writers in the New Testament, speaks about dealing with anxiety and fear in a letter to the Philippians. And he speaks about turning our worries into prayers and focusing on gratitude. And he hits one of the biggest issues relating to anxiety. It's how we think and where we allow our thoughts to wander. And he writes this: now, Dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what's true and honourable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. You see, there are many things in life which are out of our control. We can't control the pandemic. We can't control the lockdown rules. But the greatest activity of life is well within our control. We can choose what we think about. Someone once likened it to being an air traffic controller of our mental airport. We occupy the control tower and can direct the thought traffic of our world. And thoughts circle above, going round and round. And if one of them lands, it's because we've given it permission. And if it leaves, it's because we've directed it to do so. So we can select our thought patterns. And it's really important because King Solomon wrote, "Be careful what you think, because your thoughts run your life." So what did Aaron say? We shouldn't underestimate the power of what we put in our heads. Now, I understand that there is a lot to be fearful about, whether it's our health, our jobs, our mortgage, our isolation. These are anxious times. But we have this brilliant ability to fuel our fears by focusing about and talking about them constantly. So take an interest, but don't be over-consumed by it, by social media, by comments in the news. Talk about it with others, yes, but don't let it dominate every conversation. And don't be consumed by negative, unhelpful, repetitive talk. Otherwise, you'll be fueling your fears. In our interview, Aaron speaks about listening to music that lifts us. And if we're people of faith, we can listen to our favourite worship tracks, put on a Bethel song, The Goodness of God, and allow the truth of the words just to sweep over us. All my life you've been faithful. All my life you've been so, so good. Your goodness is running after me. And say to yourself, I'm going to believe this even when I don't feel it. Another discovery that Sarah, my wife, made just last month was a great website called karunavirus.org. It sounds like corona, but it's spelled Karuna virus.org, which is the Sanskrit word for compassion. And the website has 1,700 good news stories. It was launched in March, and its aim is to amplify the voice of collective compassion by featuring news articles of everyday people choosing love over fear. I was scanning it again this morning, and it has beautiful photos and great stories, such as a farmer who's planted more than 2 million sunflowers to bring joy in this rough year for people, or the Barcelona Opera reopening to an audience of 2,292 plants, which will be gifted to healthcare workers. I love it. It's so good. So as this pandemic continues and we wait for the next update from Boris after the weekend, let's not get stuck in a moment of fear and anxiety that we can't get out of. Let's choose to fix our thoughts on what's true and noble and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Because as Erin Doherty said on Sunday, we shouldn't underestimate the power of what we put in our heads. So you have a great and a positive thinking weekend. Thanks for watching.